welcome to my channel. This is Taslima from Taslima Maya Art. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to create this beautiful Arctic polar bear embellishment using paint pens and acrylic paint on a ring pour painting on a 20 by 20 centimeter canvas. Everything I use will be listed in the description box underneath my video as well as on the video. The colours I used were Amsterdam and Pebbio colours as on the screen, and they were of a thick consistency for a ring pour, which generally same as a bloom or a swipe consistency, which is rather thick and leaves a trace. Again, my pouring medium was 1 part Daler Rowney Pouring Medium to 2 parts craft glue, PVA glue, and 1 part water, and I just made sure that there was enough water to make all the consistencies the same on each of the 4 paints. So I'm pretty new to this ring pour technique, but I really love how it looks, and I have had a go at doing it on 2 tiles and 1 smaller canvas, but not of this size. This is a 20 centimeter by 20 centimeter deep edge canvas, galoo wrapped canvas. So I need enough paint to cover the sides as well. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking a cup and I'm simply pouring in each of the paints in very small layers. And the reason I'm keeping it small is because in my first test runs I put in a lot of paint on each layer, and therefore the lines were very far apart. Also my consistency was a little bit off, so it was quite thin, which made the colours bleed together, mix together a bit too much on the canvas. So I've learned from all those mistakes, and I'm hoping that this one turns out much better. The paints are a lot thicker. I'm putting in the main colours that I want to see, or the ring colours that I want to see, in the centre of my painting. So in the centre of the rings, the first few colours you put in are the ones that will remain on the canvas and be very visible, and the last few colours you put in, the last few layers, will probably be tilted off when you do your tilting part of this technique. It's just something worth remembering really, and it does influence how you layer your paints. Now, as you can see, I am simply adding very little paint and lots of layers. And I started off with a tiny bit of white at the bottom of my cup, simply because I wanted the centre of the rings to be white. And I'm just alternating the colours and making sure each of the colours goes on mostly in succession to each other in the same order. But you don't have to do that this way. You can do it any way you please. A big shout out to a great friend and artist, Sheldon Briscoe from Shellrock Arts. Please check out his channel if you haven't already. He has given me a lot of the tips that I've used in this video, and he really knows his stuff, so do check him out. I'd also like to mention Darren Nixon from Venom Fluidart and Creations by Christie, 2 great artists as well, worth checking out, along with the wonderful Britta Clayton from Britta Clayton Designs, who does some amazing larger pieces with multiple different types of techniques. She's definitely worth having a look at, along with Frosty Eye Candy and Pouring Together with Lance Travis, all amazing artists and all admins of a wonderful group on Facebook called the Acrylic Crazy Train. So if you haven't joined that, please do. There's a wealth of information in there to help you on your journey. Now back to pouring. So as you can see, I've almost finished layering my cup up. I've done very thin layers, as I said, and alternated the colours. So hopefully soon we can start pouring this out onto the canvas, and I can show you how. Okay, so here I am now ready to pour. You can see I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm sort of holding back there, but it is only I think my 4th go actually. The others were on the very small tiles, which were only 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and one was on a CD. So here it is. I'm pouring it out as steadily as I can, and I'm simply using my wrist to make circular movements so that the paint comes out of the cup gradually in a circular fashion and falls onto the canvas in small circles, and this spreads out across the canvas, and then we will begin to tilt when it's all out. Okay, so it's almost all out of the cup. Oops, I made a little blooper there and a little bit of paint dropped onto the pattern there. So I'm going to try and fix this now with a skewer and trying to move it off before I tilt, because I think it would be harder to do after I tilt. So I'm just trying to blend that in, that white bit of paint that's splashed out, as if it was part of the pattern. Yeah, so mistakes do happen and can happen, but you can always correct them. I really don't like wasting paint, especially in the world we live in where everything costs so much money. So I just try and use up the rest of the paint in my cups. I scrape them onto the sides here to get as much coverage as possible, and to also help my pattern tilt across the surface of the canvas easier, so it's not rolling over itself and changing the pattern too much. So this helps it glide along much easier, because it has something to glide along on without rolling under. So as you can see, I've now spread out that paint with my palette knife and made sure there's some coverage on the sides. I'm not too worried about the sides at the moment because I'm going to tilt this out now. So this design is going to be tilted into each of the corners and then back to the center again. And just to remind you that this is a slightly sped up video, just so I'm not using up too much of your time watching this. So I actually did this very, very slowly, and I would recommend you do it slowly and always go back to the center when you're tilting, just so you don't distort the pattern like I kind of do here. But I'm not too bothered about it because I quite like the pattern that it ended up as, slightly off center, with the center of it, to the one side. So yeah, I simply just make sure that it all tilted out to the corners and then tilted over then when I was done, so that the sides were also covered. But you can do it whichever way you like. There's no real hard and fast rule. It all depends on what you prefer, what sort of pattern you like, and how you want to do it. So, don't let me tell you that you should really do it one way. You can do it any way you want. It's pouring. It's meant to be a bit of fun. You're supposed to enjoy it, and you're supposed to like the outcome, and everything is pleasing in different ways to different people. So just have some fun is what I would advise. Here I am simply using my palette knife to scrape the undersides of the canvas, just to make sure it doesn't stick on anything and there's no drips hanging off. And I will do this every 15 minutes until it stops dripping, I guess, just to make sure it's not too messy underneath, and there's no dry drips there. I now do a slight torch, and I do this mainly because my paints were mixed minutes before pouring. Never a good idea. Always trying to mix it the day before if you can, or the night before, and it helps stop having all these little white dots, as you can see, and despite the torching, some dots still did appear because there was a lot of bubbles in my paint. So this is how I've left it wet, and I'm going to wait for it to dry to start the next stage, which will be the embellishment of the polar bears. To me, I mean, this looked like an Arctic image, maybe a cave or a watering hole, but the blues and the whites made it make me think of polar bears, which is why I chose to embellish it next. So on to stage 2 of the painting. It's fully dry now, and I'm simply using a white gel pen, or you can use an acrylic marker if you want to. I'm just drawing on a polar bear outline here. I try to position them where I think they would look the best and think of composition a little bit. So there's one perched up on that little, I'm not sure what it is, a mound, an ice mound, and looking up at the center, and then also there's one lower down by the watering hole, or what I imagine is a watering hole, and I'm simply giving up on the paint markers because my paint marker wasn't working, and I've decided to revert back to traditional paintbrush and paint. So I'm using titanium white from Amsterdam here, simply to infill or kind of underpaint the polar bear. I'm going to keep it very simple, I think, simply because I don't want to detract from the beautiful ring pour in the background. I simply want to add something to it that's not too overwhelming and doesn't take over. So I'm going to keep the polar bears white and add a little bit of shading. Now, I haven't properly painted in a long time, and I don't think of myself as a painter, but I think these come out really well, surprisingly. And I'm not very good at shading, but I simply use some grey brush pens to simply add the shading to this, and very minimal shading at that. That almost anyone, a beginner like yourself, could probably do this. So as you can see, I did the outline, I filled it in, and I simply used grey brush pens to do the highlights like this. So hopefully it's something that is doable for other people who are watching, and worth really having a go at. And it doesn't have to be polar bears. You can add any type of embellishment that you want, any type of creature or anything else, a white owl maybe, I don't know, anything, and still make it look great. So there's the finished article. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for coming on my channel and watching it. I do appreciate every one of you, and see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.